So, hello everyone, we continue our rum diary, and today we will talk about rums from Mauritius with producer, blender, Frederic Bestel. And my first question to you will be, what was your way to the alcohol industry? How long you produce rum? Who was your teachers?
Well, to start, thank you for having me here and talk about Mauritius, the rum from Mauritius, and we'll talk a bit more about my rums. I've been in that industry for 20 years now. I started with wine and spirits, much more on the trading, and then I worked for a distillery for about 6 years. It's sugarcane juice distillery. And then I started on my own for 9 years now.
So you worked with agricole before?
Yes, I worked for a distillery that made the agricole, so the distillation from the sugarcane juice. Yeah.
Was it ЦЕНТРБАЛТ?
ЦЕНТРБАЛТ.
Yes.
So you actually worked on Mauritius and even with the wine business, you were on Mauritius too?
Yes.
You were born on Mauritius?
I am born in Mauritius, bred in Mauritius.
And raised in Mauritius.
I am Mauritian.
So you are totally Mauritian.
I am Mauritian. Which means we speak French, but we write in English. That is that's what Mauritians are about.
Yeah, great.
So tell us a little about history of production rum on Mauritius. Is it more French style or British style or our own style?
Well, to start, Mauritius has been producing rum for a very long time, since 1850, around the 1850. That was the French who started the production of a rum on the island. To know a bit the history also of the island, Mauritius was a French island until 1815. The British took over the island in 1815, but they controlled the harbor. They didn't control inside, and they told the French, you can stay, you can continue make sugar. This is what, and they were not interested by that. So the French continued the sugarcane industry, and they started rum. But then also it evolved. So in 1870 we had 66 distilleries on the island, small distilleries. Today we got only 6, but today we do what we call the agricole, which is distillation of sugarcane, and the molasses. So we do both, because we have a French and British, let's say, past.
I heard that agricole for Mauritius is quite new thing, because the production of sugar was protected by government, because it was one of the export trades.
Exactly. When we took our independence in 1968, Mauritius had a trade agreement with Europe for us to start our economy. Sugar was the pillar of the development from our independence. But then the sugar industry invested in tourism, in textile, in other industry. So after 20 years now, the sugar, we are on the same price than all different countries around the world. So it's only now that the government has allowed us to make other things from the sugarcane than only sugar. So rum started, let's say, to be exported and become more popular the past 10 years, we'll say, only 10 years.
So the market changing, and the rum production is also a little bit changing.
Exact, and I think there's a lot of investment coming from different parties into branding. What is a rum from Mauritius? Why Mauritius and compared to other destinations? And many people are saying that Mauritius is a sleeping giant in the rum industry. That is because we are still at a very early stage. New brands are coming out. We don't have much of aged rum, but it's growing, and I think different producers are making good rum.
Wow.
Different style, very different style. You were asking me what is the main style. We don't have one style. We don't have one AOC. That is let's say a strength for us, because we can go in any direction we want.
Frederic, let's talk about your brand. Tell us how Gold of Mauritius was created and how was your way, maybe brands what you created before.
Yes. Well, let's say when I started, like I said, I was working for a distillery. I was very fortunate to travel a lot and go to fairs, taste different rum. And I realized that there was a trend going of something a bit new. And unfortunately, from where I was working, it was very difficult for them to go in that direction. So I tried to play around, let's say work from home, how we say. And why to do like everybody, you know, import these barrels from the same source. Mauritius is next to South Africa. South Africa is only 4 days by boat. I said, let's give it a try. And I used to import some wine from South Africa and let's work with some second-hand barrels, etc. And that was the beginning of a very different rum, which was matured in second-hand barrels. From South Africa. Wine, yeah. It's actually, there's so different wine, not the red wine, but the sweet wine, and a bit of port, and some brandy as well. So I tried a bit of that. And then I found something which I liked very much. And I remember a sommelier once told me, you know what is a good product or a good wine, what he was telling about, is the wine that you like.
Exactly.
And, yeah. It's nothing else, it's about what you like. And I liked it. And some people told me I was crazy because I was doing something completely different. But I liked it. And the word Gold of Mauritius is not made of gold. It's I tried to represent what is Mauritius. There were so many things of Mauritius. There's the people, there's the beauty of the island. And all that, there's one word that was coming out all the time was the word gold. And I think it's like the best of Mauritius. I'm trying to say one of the best of Mauritius. That was the name Gold. I liked it, and I also think that on the bottle, having the word Mauritius shows you where it's from. So I liked it, and we decided to go that way.
That's a smart idea.
Simple is sometimes better than to complicate.
Definitely. Standard aware.
In the internet, I find very small part of information about rums of Mauritius, and if you Google maybe Arcane or Gold of Mauritius, it's absolutely no information about distillery, aging, the process. So can you tell us a few secrets how you produce it?
Well, I will certainly not be able to give you all my secrets.
Yes, of course.
We're not insisting.
But I think everybody do, and that is one of the specificity of Mauritius. Everybody do it a bit their own way. We have, so I mentioned 6 distilleries. 3 are sugarcane juice, so agricole style, and 3 are molasse based.
So local?
Sorry?
Molasse local?
Molasse local, yeah. So the production is already quite big. We produced an average around 12 million liters of alcohol at 95 or 96. So I will say pure alcohol, which is a lot for a small island.
Yeah.
And so everybody's trying to age their own way. And I think there's a very strong French culture. So we use barrels from France, brand new barrels. So there's a lot of influence, and I think this is why agricole is also growing.
So the French barrel have very strong confusion on alcohol.
Yeah, I think I personally, what I do, I wanted to be different again. And working with fresh barrel, brand new barrels, will be like doing like everybody does. So on my side, I started working with second-hand. With a bit of leftovers inside, and I continue. And I think I think a second-hand barrels now is becoming more expensive than a brand new barrel. It's the trend. Even whiskey now are finished in second hands. You see that in many different spirits.
So you get your alcohol from molasse distilleries?
Yes, from the molasse distillery. I don't work with agricole. I personally believe that the quality of an agricole comes into the distillation. compared to the quality of a molasses rum comes in the finish of a product. That's my opinion. So it's very difficult to work with an agricole, especially the way I work. So I think the actual agricole producers are doing great job. And if tomorrow someone asks me for agricole, I will certainly recommend them than me trying to do anything on that side.
Yeah. So they have that experience.
They have the experience, they know how, and the colon is so important. Pot still or colon, all that.
Oh, yeah,
is,
definitely.
Yeah.
So you took spirits, alcohol from Mauritius, and you do blending, maturating also there.
Yes.
And bottling.
Bottling now, now that I do a certain volume, instead of importing the empty bottle to Mauritius, which is 45 days by boat, and re-exporting the full bottle, it's easier in terms of logistic to export the rum in Europe and bottle it in Europe.
Yeah, definitely.
Well,
It really changed the service, because any country can order now and I deliver in 24 hours. That's very important. Service is important. And I think also in terms of buying the bottles, I buy the bottles from Europe.
Yeah, shipping bottles back and forth.
Back and forth, it's very expensive.
Yeah, what for?
And cash flow.
Everything ends up in the price of the rum. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Better to sell rum than empty bottle.
But the rum is produced in Mauritius and exported in bulk at 40%. There's
already.
Yeah, because one
so
thing.
it was already normalized to this strength, yes?
Yeah, you must, because one thing that people don't talk about is the water. The quality of the water that you use to bring it down to 40 is so important. And if you change water, the product is different.
Well, you see, if you say that you do not normalize water and do not filter it and do not like stabilize it, I won't believe you. You don't use fresh water, don't you? You at least filter it, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, definitely. Well, I mean, yes, definitely, water is the major part of rum, but I mean, is it that different?
Yes.
All right.
I will. You take even a whiskey if you.
Well,
any
yeah,
spirit.
definitely.
Put an ice. Put an ice with tap water and a ice with another water.
Oh yes.
You will have two different. And I think that is for me the perfect example of showing that a product can change taste just with ice. Even you wash your glass, if it's unfortunately not properly clean or something, you will have the nose, the touch.
Definitely.
And the thickness of the water is also important. A lot of spirits are made with the demineralized, so that it's standard water. And I think that is an option, because then you can produce around the world.
Yeah, Bacardi style.
Yeah.
International brands, maybe they have a standard.
That's how they call it nowadays, eh? Okay.
So, and what kind of barrels do you use for your maturation, and how long it happens, and what climates, what's the angel share?
Okay, I use for Gold of Mauritius, the classic one, I used the second-hand port cask. When it arrives in Mauritius, I ask them to put a bit of port in it. Why? For two reasons. The first one is the aromas, for sure. But second one is to avoid fumigation. Because if it's brand new, it needs to be fumigated.
Yeah, definitely.
So when it comes, I cut the barrels, I burn by hand, you separate the sugar to the grape. After that, I move to brand new American oak. Now I start working on the strength of alcohol. When alcohol works on wood, it extracts the wood. But if you work at 70, you will work very quickly and it will be more powerful. So I work very low, around 60, 63 ABV. And Gold of Mauritius Solera 5 is finished in bourbon because when you work with a sweet base, it went a little bit too high. I had to bring it down to a round mouth. So you will see that Gold of Mauritius, the classic, is very wide in aromas, very open. It's matured rum, it's not aged rum. And the Solera 5 is there's a bit of strength, more woodwork, and then it's finished a bit more fat in the mouth. That's the Solera 5.
So, do you use any other spices except the leftovers of port in your barrels?
Yes, and I never throw away anything. Even I tried, because I did a lot of mistakes, and all that rum that have been wrongly directed, you try to redirect them. For example, Rom Club, this is a spiced rum. So you add some, here I added some cannel, some cinnamon, fresh cinnamon. You got two kinds of cinnamon. You got the powder and you got the stick. The powder will give you the nose, but not the mouth. The stick give you the mouth more. So I preferred to work with a stick. Here, I also didn't work with oranges. I work with grapefruit because it's pink, and I work with the peel on it, you know, the. And here on the sherry, because the sherry was actually an aroma that I extracted from Gulf of Mauritius at the beginning. Why? Because there was that little, it was little bit of sherry, it was unbalanced, and I did a cold filtration on Gulf of Mauritius, and I withdrew it. But then I said, no, I'm going to push it. I pushed on the sherry. I took on the 5,000 liters, going drop by drop, in a small 50 liters sherry liquor cask. And you do that, that brought quite the, wow, the sherry. When you open it, you say, wow, this is there's a sherry in it. So that was the way. But again, you have to be different, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah.
And excuse me, it's, for the Golden Mauritius, no extra spices except the barrel. No. By the way, how old is it?
1 year.
1 year. Just 1 year.
1 year.
That's it.
Why 1 year? It's important to, because on 3 months, 6 months, the alcohol is too young.
Yeah.
It's like moving around in the mouth. After a certain time, it cools down, it gets matured. And that is also pleasant in the mouth. Yeah, this is why 1 year. And after, why not more than 1 year? Because when you work on second-hand barrel, the wood has already been extracted.
Yeah.
So there's no more aromas, and your rum will stay stable. That's it. It will never evolve.
Very much.
So you use this refill cask only at once, or you do refill it after?
Yeah, refill. I change. You know, I never stop trying, and especially in this, when you work with a sweet base, you can't work more than 3-4 years in a cask. You need to move. And then with my white rum, I tried with Chardonnay. Just leave it a short period of time. It takes out the metal at the back. It's you know, you have to play around, and then you blend. When you got a characteristic here, characteristic, you blend.
Yeah, definitely.
It's fun. It makes some different aromas.
Well, at least it's fun.
Oh yes, rum is fun. Believe me,
Rum is
fun.
Oh, I do believe you, good sir. Rum is fun.
Yes.
Let's make it a statement.
What do you think about drinking of each of your products? So it's pure drinking, sipping, or it's cocktails, or any other style?
Personally, Gulf of Mauritius is a sipping rum. But if you go in certain cocktails like old fashioned, I am a fan of old fashioned, so Gulf of Mauritius will do well in it. Just push a bit on the port and add a special bitter, but not much. In terms of Rom Club, they are cocktail rum. Whereas we can do the very classic with a sherry, with gin, like a tonic, just tonic on a big glass. The classic spice you will do with ginger ale, like on the big glass, what we call long drinks. And you can have fun with it. I mean, it's with a sherry, like a classic daiquiri, you can go on Mai Tai, you can even go on a mojito. It will give this aromas. It's very, well, you can do a lot of things with Rom Club. But Gold is much more sipping. The Solera 5, I like it straight, with a little espresso next to it, some chocolate, and a cigar.
Quite well, quite interesting. I think after I will try to do some cocktails with it.
Yep.
What's your main market where you sell your rums now?
Well, I started in Germany. That was the first country. where I started. So Germany today is quite well developed. France also is very well developed. And also I got markets that are growing very fast, such as Czech Republic, for example. Rum is becoming very, very popular.
Yep.
And Asia, South Korea, China also, but those are big markets, and volume-wise is, let's say, quite interesting, but there is still a long road for the rum to become popular. Other countries, let's say like Belgium, we're doing I'm very happy. It's regular. We have repeated orders regularly. But we are now exporting to 26 countries. So
New World?
Sorry?
I mean, America?
No, not in America at all. Most of Europe, and in Asia we are, let's say, in Japan, we are in South Korea and China.
Australia?
No.
I see that.
I think it's important to make sure you can supply also is important.
Oh yeah.
When you go too big, there's a problem of supply.
Yeah. And what's on Mauritius? Is your rum popular there? Or?
Yes, I started with export. Why? Because I thought that the local market was a bit saturated, and the local market normally is white rum. It's not dark rum. But 3 years now we started in Mauritius, and it's growing very, very fast. We are doing quite well in Mauritius, and we are developing products for Mauritius as well.
Oh.
Yeah.
For Mauritius, when you're talking like for Mauritius market, you mean tourists first or local?
Both.
Both.
Let's say you have we call the Oreca Hotel. It's a big market, much more for premium rums. But let's say the retail now is growing. That's on premium. It was not like that. But that is not only because of my rum. This is because of all the rums, the Mauritian rum, are earning international recognition. Gold of Mauritius has won many awards. My colleagues also won international awards. And the Mauritians are intrigued. Oh, if our rum is making, let me taste.
This is really good.
Well, and how you can describe the entry in the new markets in general? Do you have difficult markets or markets where you go and live, or markets was, as you say, grow very well?
Well, like I said, we are on 26, and I think every market is different. One of the most important things is to listen to the market, is to understand the market. Every market, the structure is different, the logistic is different, and consumer is the king. He's the one who decides. You cannot go and say, I want this. No. If the consumer doesn't like a product, doesn't buy another bottle, then it's more difficult. But you got some countries where logistic is the problem, where you have, so in Europe now it's one big trade, so the products are coming of it from everywhere. I think this is a bit of a competition. Price is becoming more and more sensitive. So all that product grows in reputation. I think the price compress, and it's certainly the consumer that benefits. But again, I listen to the market. I do what the market expect me to do. That is the most important thing. And I don't have one specific direction. But Asia, like I said, Asia is growing, and we expect to be more in like Hong Kong and Singapore in the next coming months. Yeah.
Well, and if we are talking about the market, how it's changed for the last several years? Can we say that rum still based on a traditional producting, or it goes with the market?
You got both. I've seen a lot of big marketing brands coming in, but you see them leaving also very quickly. I think tradition is very important. But again, the consumer will not buy a product because it only has history. The consumer will buy a product because he enjoys the product. So it's very important. But if you don't have history, if you don't have a brand, if you don't have all that, it's difficult to make the consumer taste the product. So you need a combination of a bit everything.
Well, that's a good answer. And
Jägermeister tastes like shit, got a shitty history, but People still buying it and drinking it.
But some people like it, I'm sure. If they
Yeah,
otherwise, they
it's
will not.
sweet.
But this is the issue.
You see, the thing is, as I could see it, there's two major ways. You're either selling a box or you're selling a product. Because if you start selling a product in a box, it'll be too expensive.
Yeah.
So, so you majorly invest. Well, let's say what's the percentage of a marketing price in the bottle? For example, for the gold Mauritius. So, could you answer this question, or it's a bit too?
No, it's not about confidentiality at all. I am a very young brand. I am not part of a big company. I am an artisan. You have to go with a feeling factor. So it's not like, the price is 10, 2 goes to marketing, 3 goes. It doesn't work that way. When you have, like I said, you go to a market, you listen to the market. The market said, okay, I need to do an activity. It has a cost, it has how much. Is it possible for me to do that? What will be the return of that? After 6 months, we evaluate. It worked, it doesn't work. We have to change, So I am not maybe a big company to think square. This is why I travel a lot, I go to the market, I listen, and I often bring in some ideas. People say, oh yes, let's do it. And we start steadily. But let's say on some market like Germany and France, it's a bit more different, because now we have evolved, we have come to a certain volume. Now we can say, okay, we got a budget now for the year, and but I don't dictate. It's the distributor who says what needs to be done.
Well, Frederic, what was the most remarkable case in your career, Rom?
Well, I think the first year was certainly the most unforgettable moment. I was telling that story when I produced my first bottles of rum, and I went to Berlin Rum Fest, and someone came and said, I want to import your brand, and he placed an order for a pallet. I said, oh, well, I'm going to do that. I said, yes, sure. But now, how I'm going to do it? And I think those are the moments that I will never forget, because they are the motor that push you, that makes the courage and the strength of going forward. And then for sure, after you make one pallet, it's terrible. You shake like that, meet deadline. It was. I think that year was for me every little moments of that, the stress, the passion behind it, and it's unforgivable. It's part of it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Was there any funny stories during your promote your rum during different countries?
Well, there is a lot of, I think, like I said, rum is fun. So what I really like with what I do, I travel, I meet people, and we are in bars, we talk, we chat, we enjoy sometimes my rum, sometimes another rum, and there's many fun moments around it. Now, for sure, a lot of people don't know about Mauritius, and I talk about it, and people want to come to Mauritius. I always invite them, and come and be on the island. So there is not one specific, and I think there's many moments where you meet wonderful people, and I go to certain fairs regularly, year after year. You see the same people, you make friends. So I'm very thankful and grateful for doing this kind of passion.
Rum is one of the best social lubricants, what we'll do without it.
So I'm very happy to contribute to it.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So,
we appreciate it too.
Yeah. Can you tell a few words about rum for Russian rum lovers?
Well, I think
Like a message.
like a message.
Come to Mauritius. All rum's there.
Yeah, come and drink rum in Mauritius. That will be wonderful. But well, enjoy it. You know, the best rum is still what you enjoy, and I think personally, give it a try. And like I say, go to Mauritius straight to first understand it. Understand there's wonderful cocktails that you can drink with it. Enjoy it, and rum is fun. Don't forget, rum is fun.
Thank you.
Thank you, Frederic. Thank you for coming. Thank you for explaining. Thank you for your beautiful rums.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. Huh?
It's a
Let's
pleasure.
go to drink rum.
Yeah, let's drink rum.